everyone. This video is going to discuss how to solve quadratic equations. A quadratic equation is a equation that has an x squared in it. It may or may not have some of these other pieces in there, but it does have an x squared, hence making it the quadratic. We're going to discuss how to solve these. You have discussed this in earlier courses in your career, and this again is in section 1.4. If you have not looked at 1.5, I suggest that you do that before this part, as we will be seeing some of 1.5 in this video as well. So make sure you go and do the 1.5 before you do this 1.4. All right, quadratics. To solve a quadratic, what we want to do first of all is to set it equal to 0. So we want to get all of our terms on one side. And then the technique is we try to factor if possible. Because if we can factor it, then what we'll do is we'll set the factors equal to 0. And we'll be done. We'll be able to solve those little pieces. If it does not factor, and I usually spend a little bit of time on the factoring. If I can't get it to factor right away, I go right to that quadratic formula. And while we're doing these problems, we'll remind us of what that is. So let's jump into some examples, and we'll go from there. So we have x squared minus 8x plus 13. And the first thing we're going to do is to try to factor this. So we're looking for, and I'm going to change this to 12 so it starts out nice. Yeah, why did I write 13? So x squared minus 8x plus 12 equaling 0. The first thing I'm going to do is I want to factor it if possible. So I wanted one that factored. Hence the reason I changed it to 12. And so I'm looking for two numbers that multiply together to give me a positive 12, that add together to give me a negative 8, and the two that work are the negative 6 and the negative 2. So then I'm going to take each factor, set them equal to 0, and I get that x is equal to 6 and x is equal to 2. Adding 6 to both sides and so forth. All right. Let's go to another one here. We have 3x squared minus 12x plus 6. Okay, this has a leading coefficient of not 1, so we're going to try that other technique. So we're going to take 3 times 6. That gives me 18. So I'm going to be looking for two numbers that multiply together, that give me a positive 18, that add together to give me a negative 12. Or some of you may have taken a step back and realized, oh, there's a 3 in everything. So we could have factored that 3 out first. Look at that. And then I can divide both sides by 3 to get rid of that 3. So now this basically becomes down to x squared minus 4x plus 2 equaling 0. Leading coefficient of 1. So I'm looking for two numbers that multiply together to give me 2, add together to give me negative 4. And that's not going to happen. So I am going to go to the quadratic formula. The quadratic formula looks like a negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Remembering that a is in front of the x squared, the b is your coefficient in front of your x term, and the c is that constant term. So we will have a negative b, so 4 plus or minus b squared 16 minus 4 times 1 times 2 all over 2 times 1. So here we get 4 plus or minus 16 minus 8, which is 8, all over 2. The square root of 8, I can bring out a 4 as 2. Then I can factor a 2 out of these guys. 2 plus or minus the square root of 2, all over 2, and those 2's cancel. And I'm left with my answers of 2 plus or minus the square root of 2. Okay, let's do another one. X squared plus 5x minus 24, or plus 20 equals 24. First thing I do is bring that 24 over. I will try to factor it. So I'm looking for two numbers that multiply together to give me a negative 24, that add together to give me a positive 5. And I think they do factor. I think 8 and 3. Positive 8, negative 3. Setting each factor equal to 0. X is equal to 3. X is equal to negative 8. Okay. I do have a couple more, just for practice. All right, so 4x squared plus 12x plus 9. Learning from the last one, first thing I should do is see if there's a common factor in all of those. I do not see one, because there's no 4 in 9. So I'm going to think two numbers that multiply together to give me 36, that add together to give me 12. And those would be 6 and 6. So I'm going to rewrite this 12 as 6x plus 6x. This is how I factor. If you remember how to factor with just by trial and error, feel free to do so. But now I can factor by grouping. So out of these first two, I'm going to take a 2x out. And I'm left with 2x plus 3. Out of these, I'm going to take a 3 out. And I'm left with 2x plus 3. Both of these have a 2x plus 3 in them, which leaves 2x plus 3 left. So setting my factor, I only have one, but it happened twice, equal to 0. Move the 3 over, so 2x equals negative 3. Dividing by 2, we get x equals negative 3 halves. All right, one last problem. X squared plus 2x plus 2. Two numbers that multiply together to give you 2 that add to give you 2. It does not work, so I will go to that quadratic formula. Negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So negative b, or opposite of b, plus or minus b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now I will clean this up. So 4 minus 8 gives me a negative 4. The square root of a negative does incorporate those imaginary numbers from section 5. Hence the reason I suggest doing 5 first, because I can write this now as 2i. And then I can break those into both of them, negative 2 plus or minus 2i, both of them over 2, or factoring out the 2 and then reducing, whichever works. We get negative 1 plus or minus I as being your solution. So here's kind of a quick review of how we would solve quadratics, and basically it boils down to try to factor it. If it factors relatively quickly, great. If not, quadratic formula always works. So even if you want to just use quadratic formula all the time, it will work.